the superdelegates, which I think have 8 already from New Hampshire, 6 of those have pledged their allegiance to Hillary Clinton. So despite being trounced in New Hampshire, Hillary Clinton is now coming out in a dead heat with Bernie Sanders out of the superdelegate and delegate total at 15 apiece.
And I want to say, I still love New Hampshire.
And how that has happened is that while there are pledged delegates that come from the vote totals that the candidates get from the primaries, there's also this world called superdelegates, where party establishment figures, political elected officials, and grand old men and women of the Democratic Party make up these so-called superdelegates, which are independent of the voters' will and can pledge their allegiance to a candidate of their choice.
In each political party, about 20% are superdelegates, enough that even if voters clearly pick one candidate, the wizards could still have enough power to tip the scales the other way.
It's a rigged system inside the Democratic Party, which is there by design, because the Democratic Party since the 1970s and especially since the 1980s has set up these superdelegates to prevent insurgents like Bernie Sanders from overwhelming the capitalist core of the Democratic Party. And the particular history of why they created the superdelegates is the party establishment's evaluation of the George McGovern campaign in 1972, which was an expression of the anti-war movement through the Democratic Party.
Said this war is a moral debacle, and we ought to withdraw our forces right now, or this will haunt us.
It so offended the Democratic Party establishment that they actually abandoned support for the McGovern campaign, preferring to see Richard Nixon win. And so after both the failed attempt of McGovern to win the election because he was undermined by the Democratic Party establishment, and then the disastrous failures of the Jimmy Carter presidencies, the party establishment decided in the early 1980s to create these superdelegates, which would be a firewall to prevent insurgent and dissident candidates from winning the nominations. That produces a real contradiction at the heart of the Democratic Party, which is, as a capitalist party, its social base is inside unions and oppressed people's organizations. Therefore, it's always going to have the threat of a challenge that would more clearly represent the interests of workers and oppressed groups in our society.
Now, these superdelegates have a right to vote their conscience and who they think will be the better president or who can win.
Have two capitalist parties, the A team of American capitalism, which has traditionally been the Republican Party, and the B team of American capitalism, which is the Democratic Party. Whenever the A team discredits itself, in comes the B team to prevent a real working class challenge, a new third party that would represent the interests of working class and oppressed people. But all of this points to the fact that Sanders' message is fantastic on most domestic questions, not that good on foreign policy at all. But even with his weaknesses, the Democratic Party establishment is clearly under threat, and they may be forced to deploy their superdelegate hand. I just want to call attention to how exciting it is right now to be a socialist, to be a radical, to be somebody on the left, because this election looked like it was going to be a coronation of Hillary Clinton, who is somebody who's an expression of all that's wrong in American society, a politician who says one thing and does another. And what she has done, whether in office or in her bureaucratic appointments, is basically what big business wanted and has betrayed the aspirations of workers and the oppressed. And to have somebody like Bernie Sanders calling that out and naming it and describing the corruption of American democracy and winning as high as 84% of youth votes, that can only foretell positive things for the redevelopment of an American left. That said, the contradiction of the Sanders campaign is he's saying most of the right things in the wrong party, a party that stands against everything that he stands for. And it underlines the opportunity for the left to make an argument to a whole new socialist generation that it's time to build a party of our own that represents and agitates in the streets, workplaces, and at the ballot box for our agenda for workers and the oppressed.